It's that time of the year again, so let me begin as I do with all of my sermons on Rosh Hashanah, with a confession. I confess that I believed that you used to be nicer. You heard that right. I'm not sure what's happened over the past 6 years, but I believed that you were nicer when I arrived than you are now. You were kinder, you were more patient, a little more understanding. Those were the good old days, the honeymoon phase, the bygone era. And now I ask that you confess too. How many of you believe that, generally speaking, people used to be nicer? The world used to feel safer. How often do you yearn for a time when things were just better? Well, good news. The science is on our side, because when questions like these are asked of people around the world, the results are consistent. On more than 80% of questions asked in similar surveys worldwide, a majority of people say that things used to be better, that morality in our world has declined. The majority of us believe this to be true, and yet the studies also say that our conclusions are wrong. Although we perceive it to be true, it's not true that you used to be nicer or that the world used to be better and safer. We all believe in an incredible myth, what one group of social scientists has dubbed the illusion of moral decline. The data says that we're all wrong. A study published in June of this year demonstrates that the majority of people hold two principles to be true, but they cannot both be true simultaneously. Number one, that morality around the world is declining. People are not as nice as they used to be. And number two, that our contemporaries with whom we have meaningful connections and relationships have remained just as nice or are even nicer than they used to be. Everyone else is mean and immoral, but not my people. This simply cannot be true. We know from a historical perspective that humanity is kinder and the world is more peaceful for its inhabitants than it was many years ago. In measurable ways, the majority of people in the world live an existence today that is safer, that is healthier, and that is better than it was decades ago, certainly better than it was centuries ago. Moral decline is an illusion. It is a myth to which many of us have subscribed. As I've spoken about before, myths are powerful because they constitute the framework within which civilizations operate. The problem with this particular myth of moral decline is that it's patently false. Although it feels this way, the world is not in a downward spiral, yet there is a Jewish concept that mirrors this idea, which we call Yeridat HaDorot, literally the decline of the generations. The concept posits that in each successive generation, as we get farther away from the moment of standing at Mount Sinai and receiving the Torah from God, then the less capable we are to understand and properly interpret Jewish law. We are apparently intellectually inferior to our ancient Israelite ancestors who heard the sacred words uttered by God. One of our Talmudic sages offers a similar sentiment when he said, Im Rishonim b'nei Malachim, if the early generations were referred to as children of angels, then we are simply the children of human beings. But if the early generations are only referred to as children of human beings, anu kachamorim, then we are like jackasses. The only redeeming quality I can find in the concept of Yeridat HaDorot is that it reminds us to be humble and to maintain a certain perspective of the past. There may indeed be things that we do not understand, but telling me that I'm intellectually inferior and unable to comprehend, that's not terribly compelling. Although the conservative movement has not officially rejected the concept, we certainly push back against it. For the movement with the motto, tradition and change, we assert that modernity presents us with a more developed sense of morality and ethics. Today, our values include egalitarianism and inclusion, which are positive values that have moved us in the right direction. The Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, the body which issues statements and rulings on conservative Jewish law today, is the counterexample to Yeridat HaDorot. Not only are we not inferior to our ancestors, but we firmly believe that our convictions reflect values that are more enlightened and in many ways are more sophisticated than those of earlier generations. What then accounts for this illusion of moral decline? One study explains that there are two psychological phenomena at work. The first is that we're more likely to gravitate towards and focus upon negative information about other people. That's why we believe that people today are not very nice. And the second phenomenon is that we often forget negative events as we get farther away from them. The result is that our negative memories from distant times are being wiped from our minds, and therefore the present time feels more troubling and problematic because those negative memories are still fresh in our minds. The study suggests that we're inclined to see today as a moral wasteland and to see the past as a moral wonderland. And therefore, the study concludes, when people in a wasteland remember being in a wonderland, they may naturally conclude that the landscape has changed. We cannot change these psychological phenomena that are at work, but knowing and understanding these realities, we can change the manner in which we respond. We know it is true that we are more disconnected from one another than we were in the past. We know that part of this problem is a mental health crisis in our country, especially amongst teens. The numbers are quite staggering. 1 out of 7 teens and preteens experiences a mental disorder of some sort. In the Jewish community, the rates of depression are higher than they are in the Christian community. And believing in the illusion of moral decline only perpetuates and exacerbates the problem because it discourages us from reaching out to others and from making meaningful connections with them. And therefore, the antidote to the illusion of moral decline is to cultivate a more engaged and interconnected community, to make more people your people. Building stronger communities is easier said than done. If I knew precisely the right answer, I'd be a rabbinic consultant instead of just a rabbi. There are many ingredients that contribute to the formation of a strong community. One important ingredient is to have community leaders who are willing to engage in this work, who carve out the time to do the work, which can be tedious and messy and time-consuming. I am willing to do this, and so are the rest of the clergy and staff, along with our lay leaders and our committee chairs. That's why we are in this business. The other important ingredient is the one where I anticipate will face some resistance. We need all of you. We need our community members to be invested in this work too. Nobody can do this for you. I cannot make friends for you. I cannot build a strong community of individuals if people are apathetic about meeting other people and really getting to know them. And even if I could do all of that, it still would never be enough. Rabbi Natan Tzvi Finkel offers a beautiful teaching in which he explores this idea. He reminds us that God's creation was made for us and for our enjoyment. This is a core principle of Jewish thought. The world is a gift from God for us to enjoy responsibly. But we cannot only enjoy things as individuals, we can also experience joy vicariously through others. We are happy when we see that others are happy. And then he offers his chiddush, his novel idea. Receiving all of the joy in the world, both our own and the joy of others, still is never enough for us. And why not? Because being a passive receiver of joy is insufficient. What brings us real joy and fulfillment is being a giver of joy. Being the type of person who is actively involved in creating joy for someone else. This attribute is called chesed, true loving kindness, and it is planted within each and every one of us. It's a desire to actively give of ourselves to others. Rabbi Natan Tzvi Finkel writes, "Giving is the true zenith of receiving, and giving is itself the enjoyment that we receive from it. Being an active giver makes you happier and more satisfied than being a passive receiver." And it might seem counterintuitive, and that's precisely why it's a brilliant chiddush, a novel idea. We might expect that constantly receiving the things that we want will make us happier. But the opposite is true. Being the giver is what brings us true happiness. And this isn't just some idea posited by a rabbi based on Jewish text. The truth has also been demonstrated in studies. In 2016, participants in an online study were randomly assigned to 4 groups. Number 1, to do nice things for others. Number 2, to do nice things for the world. Number 3, to do nice things for themselves. And number 4 was a group that was assigned a neutral control activity for the study. The results demonstrated that, quote, as people do nice things for others, they may feel greater joy, contentment, and love, which in turn promote great overall well-being and improve social relationships. The more you do for others, the greater you feel, because you are activating a cycle that leads to people becoming more trusting of others, forming more inclusive and cohesive social groups, and expanding your sense of self to include others. You make more people your people. You provide a tikkun, a repair, to what we all perceive as the fracturing of our society. We talk about self-care as if that only includes treating ourselves, but the study's authors prove that we might be more successful if instead we treat someone else. You'll get more out of the things where you actively contribute and invest than you will from the things where you are only a passive receiver and a beneficiary of services. During our Sea Change trainings a couple years ago, we learned from Jeannie Appelman, senior organizer and trainer for Join for Justice. One of the most important lessons of Jeannie's trainings is to follow her iron rule for community organizing. Do not do for others what they can do for themselves. The rule flips the model that is so pervasive and so incredibly unsustainable in many synagogue settings. Sometimes synagogues operate in this transactional model. Members come forward to leadership with their next great idea, and they expect that the paid staff and clergy will execute all necessary tasks in order to transform their idea into a reality. Sometimes we even do that, and yet it rarely results in increased participation or more meaningful engagement, even for the one who had the original idea. And this is because although it was their idea, they really did not have a stake. They didn't have any skin in the game. This approach perpetuates an unhealthy system of deeply transactional relationships. But if we follow Jeannie's iron rule, do not do for others what they can do for themselves, then the entire dynamic is transformed. Through meaningful and intentional conversations, we together determine what are the tasks that you can do. Who are the other individuals in our orbit who might be interested in partnering with us on this project? What are their skills and their talents and their areas of expertise? And what can I do to empower you, assist you, and help you to transform your dream into a reality? In an article about why American Christians have stopped attending church, the author writes, "A vibrant, life-giving church requires more, not less time and energy from its members. It asks people to prioritize one another over career. When you do this, when you prioritize other people over personal gain, then you have a stake with them. Everyone is more deeply invested. And if God willing all goes well, you will feel the incredible satisfaction that comes from giving of yourself to the community, to building those relationships, and to making more people your people." I know that what I'm saying may be bothersome to some of you. It may challenge your expectations of what a synagogue exists to do. But my role as a spiritual leader is to do just that, to challenge you in ways that will hopefully lead to growth, to nourishment, and to fulfillment. One is never too old or too young to reconsider their expectations of the world. This morning we read the narrative of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, one of the most deeply distressing and problematic narratives in the entire Torah. I facilitated a workshop last week in which we examined Abraham as a character, both faithful and flawed, and used our understanding of him as a lens through which to read this troubling text. If we can see the narrative as a myth, as a story with a lesson, rather than as a historical event, we can remove just some of our discomfort about its particularities and instead see within it a deeper lesson that reinforces everything that I've already said today. In his book, Inheriting Abraham, biblical scholar John D. Levinson writes about the Akedah. He says, in the paradoxical, sacrificial logic of which this text is the outstanding Jewish example, it is our ungrudging willingness to give, that leads to gaining and retaining that which is most precious. The Akedah teaches us that the ultimate form of giving results in retaining and gaining. Kindness is not a zero-sum game. If we learn to give of ourselves, if we invest deeply in the things that matter most to us, if we volunteer, if we contribute, if we step forward, then we are bound to receive back our investment in manifold ways. Here at B'nai Israel, we are trying to create the conditions in which you can do just that. For more than 6 years, our congregation has supported a group of women who meet monthly in a class that began as a course on wise aging, a book by Rabbi Rachel Cowan and Dr. Linda Thal designed to help participants make aging a good and powerful experience. We're about to start a new wise aging cohort. We hope that the relationships that participants build with each other will mirror the strength and the resiliency of the ones formed by the original group. We hope to start a new adult B'nai Mitzvah program early 2024, just a couple of months from now, where participants will engage with Jewish texts and traditions, working towards a celebration of B'nai Mitzvah together. We're about to conclude our Scientists in Synagogues series, and we hope to transform that into an affinity group, people who with shared interests and passions that meets periodically to continue exploring these topics. And we hope that we can offer other affinity groups as long as there's a critical mass of individuals who are interested and who are willing to partner with us to do the work to make it happen. These affinity groups are based on passions and interests, and will also soon explore the opening up of new chavurot, groups of families, couples, and individuals who have the chance to gather together for Shabbat and holiday dinners, for social events, and for other opportunities. If you're interested in participating in any of these, please do let me know. And to do all of this, we need your support and we need your participation. We need you to engage. We need you to take on the challenge with us of intentionally building relationships, building connections, and strengthening our sacred community together. This is the antidote to the illusion of moral decline. My challenge to you this year is to come to B'nai Israel and to make more people your people. Shana Tova.